Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. Today is going to be a really interesting day. Usually on the show, I have someone on here and we're talking about stuff and we're all in absolute agreement. I'm just listening with bated breath and all that sort of thing. But today we have on the show someone that's might disagree with me and I might disagree with them. There's two things I want you to notice about today is number one, how brothers treat each other when we are in disagreement. But also think about, what we're saying and listen carefully. This is going to be one you don't want to miss and one that you really want to pay attention to. Today we're going to talk about same-sex attraction and this phenomenon that is not new to this world, but is being talked about in a new way in Christianity. So stay tuned. This is the Renton Rathbun Show. All right. Well, I don't know if I've said this in a while, so it is important for you to know that this show is for parents, grandparents, people that are interested in mentoring, because what we're trying to do is trying to look at worldviews that are coming up against the knowledge of God and how we respond to them biblically. And I think that's the biggest part. When we look at worldviews, responding to them with Scripture is key. Without that, all we have is a bunch of opinions, and we might as well be a bunch of talking heads just being a bunch of good Republicans, and that's not what I'm interested in. What I'm interested in is for us to be Christ-like, to be like in the image of the Son. So that's what this show is for, and I hope that it is a blessing to you. I appreciate all the people that have been watching. I don't know how many viewers we'll have on YouTube at this point when this finally airs, but we are getting close to 150,000 views, so that's super exciting. Our Spotify is exploding. We have over 20-some thousand downloads. You guys are killing it. Thanks. Oh, and we have almost no subscribers. So it would be super cool if you would subscribe right now. Just take the time. You're barely listening to this part anyway. So just subscribe and like, and there's a bell. I don't know what that's all about, but do the whole thing. Do the whole thing. Okay. Thank you for joining us here at the Renton Rathbun Show. Today with us, as we talk about this important subject of same-sex attraction, is Mr. Colton Beach. Thank you for coming, Colton. First of all, it's important for everyone to know you didn't just pop in from the area. You came from New York City.
That's right.
New York City. I'm not talking about like upstate New York where you're, on a farm. You came from New York City.
Right.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's rare in these conversations to speak across difference. I think we like to talk to people who agree with us, and it's like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So I really appreciate it. I think it's rare, especially in this particular debate or conversation. And yeah, I saw that you also did an episode about my neighbor in New York.
Who's your neighbor?
Do you have an idea of who that might be?
Who's your neighbor?
It's not Superman. I'm Donnie.
He's your neighbor?
The next door.
Are you okay? Now, sometimes people say next door, but they mean like 5 hallways down.
I mean, like, there's my building and then there's his building, and they're adjacent to each other.
Whoa!
So there's like cops and paparazzi outside all the time.
That?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
And we got a lot of views on that.
Oh, good.
I think people are just curious to see if I could say the name, and it's Mom Donnie.
You did it. Amazing.
It doesn't take much for me to be impressed with myself, but that was hard. And he's just right over there.
Yeah, I've been there for 4 years, and apparently my upstairs neighbor knew about it. And I was like, "Do you know the famous person who lives, next to us?" And he was like, "Yeah, I've known for a while." So I was apparently the last to find out.
And here's something that didn't make the episode.
Yeah,
he used to be a rapper.
I don't know. I'm not close with him. I don't know.
Yeah, deniability is always important.
Mm.
So yeah, I think I'm like 80% sure that's true. He was like, I don't think he was like big.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how. I don't know how big how high he got in the rapping world, but he definitely. I think this would probably be a better career for him going into politics. I mean, I don't agree with him and all that sort of thing, and
We'll find out in November.
Yeah, I think it's dangerous to bring him in, but it's New York. They probably will. Probably will.
I mean, you're definitely racking up a lot of views on people who live on my street in Queens. So
really,
yeah.
All right. Well, I hope they don't hate me too much. Okay, so let's talk about you. Could you give us a brief little account of your testimony? And it has to be brief.
Okay.
But a brief testimony of how the Lord has brought you to who you are today.
Cool. Just a summation of my life. Real quick. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I grew up in a multi-generational Christian home here in South Carolina, and wanted to follow God. Became a Christian from a very early age, and as far as, since we're talking about sexuality, I'll incorporate that into the story too. So grew up in church. We heard about gay people, but it was kind of in a us versus them, or there's these outsiders who are anti-God, anti-family, and all this stuff. And so it was just very unrelatable, while at the same time I was noticing in the department stores, when we would be in the men's underwear aisle, I'd feel big feelings and not understand why, or even know, is this what everyone's feeling right now? Why is this okay to look at? And no one seems to have a problem. Meanwhile, we'd pass Victoria's Secret or something. My mom would cover my eyes. So I was trying to navigate that, and going through puberty and all this other stuff. Still wanted to follow God. Went to a Christian university. Dated some women. Those relationships didn't really work out. But through that whole experience, and even in having porn addiction and things like that, to gay porn, I still didn't really think this meant anything about me. I just thought this was this shameful, private thing that I needed to work out. And since we did talk so much about in church, about marriage and how, God gave us sexual desire, but he that's how we were created, and that can be fulfilled in your partner. I was just assuming that works for me as well, where if I just had a partner, then I wouldn't have to deal, these feelings wouldn't matter anymore. And so that was kind of what I was looking to as kind of my solution for all of this. So graduated from Christian university, then moved out on my own, still was dating women, attended a church. But then over time, I started to be a little more curious about these attractions, not really sure, is this just something I was taught growing up that everyone else believed, or is this what do I believe about this? So there was this curiosity that I kind of didn't know what was on the other side of that. And so I changed my Hinge profile to be open to both men and women, and just thought, okay, I'll just chat to guys and see what they say. Of course, that opened a whole door. Ended up having a boyfriend for 6 months. We were codependent. The whole time I just felt so convicted, so far from God, which was so frustrating, because it's wow, this is I feel so connected. I'm so excited about this person. I'm so in love. And yet the Holy Spirit's still convicting me this whole way through. Crazy. But at that time, I still was denying that I was gay. So it's just I'm like everyone else. I apparently have this very broad sexuality that, I can be attracted to all these different people. Maybe I'm bi or something like that. I wasn't talking about it, wasn't identifying that way. And then we broke up. I ended up just going into hookup culture and just being well, I just enjoy the sex, so I'm just going to stick with that. And that was a while until I got to a point where I was living a double life. There's the people who knew me from church, and then there's the people who knew me outside of church, and they knew different versions of me. And that'll wear you down. That's exhausting to live a double life. Don't recommend.
Yeah.
And so I just got to this point where I was so far from God. I wasn't being honest about myself in any arena of life. And so there was this disintegration in my life. And I just kind of reached rock bottom, where I was something has to change. And I was just so aware too that I was just living my life for my own pleasure, and just kind of okay, what's the next dopamine high that I can have today or this week? And it's just kind of not worth. It didn't feel like it was worth living a life for myself purely that way. So I basically was like, okay, maybe following God in this way is worth it or possible. I didn't grow up knowing anyone who like acknowledged that this was like their attraction or like what they should do about it. So I was just kind of like purely going off of conviction, right? So I came out to my pastor. He was so gracious, so kind about it. Gave me some like spiritual direction on that. Started coming out to my family, my church, my friends, and now I'm completely, openly gay. But I have decided to completely turn away from this sexual lifestyle outside of, God's plan for marriage with a man and a woman, where like I see that as the only pathway for expressing sexuality. And so basically I'm planning to be single the rest of my life, if that's what God has called me to, and just to constantly be, battling lust and all the things that we all do as Christians when we fully submit ourselves to God. It's just not it's just not a life path that I had thought that would be possible growing up. That was not short, but...
No, it was pretty short. That was good.
I tried.
So what you're saying is, you have this, you are same-sex attracted, but you are saying, I am not going to act on that in a sexual way.
Right.
You are saying that you believe what the Bible says about marriage as between a man and a woman, and that's how God intended that to be. So you're saying some things that are very conservative things to say.
Yeah.
And so that's probably going to be hard for people to register.
Yeah.
So, this
like
guy...
in New York?
Well, I mean, maybe for our listeners, because they're probably thinking, okay, he says he's gay, but he also says he's not going to act on that.
Right.
And so, they're probably thinking, as I am, praise the Lord, you want to obey what Scripture says about that. And, you're saying that, marriage is between a man and a woman. That's how God intended it. And, marriage is so important in that God even compares it to give us a picture of what Christ is to the church. He compares that to marriage. And so it's not that you're taking marriage even like you're not serious about that. It's like, well, whatever. So you're taking all these very conservative points of view. So tell us about, how would you then kind of define, first, okay.
Yeah.
Is the term same-sex attraction a term you would use? And then if it is, how would you define it? If it's not, what?
Yeah. Depending on the context, I could definitely use that language. I have several friends who use that language to describe their experience of attraction. I tend to go with the vernacular. So I usually say gay, but either kind of tend to describe the same thing. And you said, what is that?
Yeah.
Which is like an enduring sexual attraction to the same sex.
Okay. Okay. So this brings us to where we kind of part ways in our belief systems. On your, and you can correct me and tell me what you're thinking. From your point of view, having is the desire a temptation or is it an orientation?
That's a great question.
That's what we need to get to.
Yeah, I would not describe same-sex attraction as a temptation because I'm not tempted to be same-sex attracted in the same way that like a straight person isn't tempted to be attracted to the opposite sex, right? Okay. So it's like that's not something that like I'm tempted to and either give in or don't give in. It just kind of is, and I see it as a fallen state, right? In the same way that you and I are wearing clothes right now. Like, it's a result of our fallen state in which we're not comfortable being publicly nude. Yeah. But so it's a result of the fall. It would not be true if there were not sin in the world, but now is kind of like where we're at. Right? Okay.
So let me talk to you about, and to be fair, I don't know what camera I should be looking at. To be fair to everybody, to be fair to Colton, I sent him questions ahead of time, and like it is on every show I do, we never stick to them. And I am sorry because I'm about to go off script.
Let's go.
And it's not fair to you. And I just want you
I have these conversations all the time. Let's do it.
I just want that to be clear. So I'm not trying to have a gotcha moment. But I do want to talk about, you said something about the fall. So this is a fallen thing. And I would agree with you on that. But there's two kinds of fallen states that we live in. So there's the fall in that death reigns. So that's from Romans 12, that death reigns like a king over everything. And so just recently, I did, this morning, we recorded a show where I talked to someone who had cancer. Cancer is part of the fall.
Yeah.
That's part of death reigning. Our eyes being opened, and so God is the one that clothed Adam and Eve. So he demands the clothes because our eyes are open. But those things, so there's that kind of fallen. It's not a sin for man to have cancer. It's not a sin for us to wear clothes because God demanded it. Is it a sin? Because I see, another part of the fallen world is sin. Do you see a sexual attraction to men as a man a sinful part of the fall, or just a state that is like a no-fault type part of the fall?
Yeah. What you were describing earlier, like how we, if someone's born with some like physical ailment or something like that, we wouldn't say, oh, that's sinful. It's a result of sin, but it's not sinful. That's how I view it. But also, like, we have this promise in the scriptures that God's not ever going to cause us to sin. We're never going to be in a place where we had no choice. We just had to sin, right? And so looking at that framework, I can know, okay, this is something I can opt into or opt out of whenever when sin is the topic of discussion. So, I don't view the attraction itself as sin. I do view lust as sin, right? And I think that's something that most people who are not asexual can relate to.
Right. Okay. And I think, and this is, okay, back to the script.
Okay.
So I did warn you I wanted to go into Romans chapter 1. And so, that's where things get really clear about the fact that, because, you've heard the silly arguments from unbelievers that say, well, in Leviticus, it says that you shouldn't be gay, but it also says you shouldn't eat shellfish.
Right.
And they think they got you because they have no understanding of the context of the culture at the time and the difference between laws and things like that.
Sure.
But here it is in the New Testament, and I know with all the things you've been, you've fought through in the world you lived in, from the culture even of where you grew up. You've already dealt with these verses, so I'm curious to see what you think. So in my view, I think that the sexual attraction itself is part of the actual sin. And so I get a sense of that, and I think this is where you're going to be going with the lust issue, but I just want to see what I want you to explain it to me. So it says in Romans 1, if I can find it. So for this reason, God gave them over to degrading passions. So the passion there is part of the sin, not just the actual act of homosexuality. For the women exchanged the natural function with the unnatural, and in the same way, also men abandoned their natural function of the woman and burned in their desire toward one another. And so you're saying that burning and then the degrading passions, that's lust. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, I don't think God punished people by making them gay.
Right.
Right.
So you're saying that you were, if I can put it this way, okay, how would you respond to someone say, would it describe you best that you were born this way?
I like how you talked about it with Mazak, actually.
Okay, go ahead.
Where you're like, yeah, we're all born in different besetting sins or things like that, or different temptations, like different people. Some people are predisposed to alcoholism, things like that, right?
Yeah.
But the predisposition isn't the sin, right?
Okay.
Like if you are predisposed to be an alcoholic, like that's you have not yet crossed the threshold into sin.
Gotcha.
Right? Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and he and I were talking about that, and there's a part 2 coming. Well, at this time has come out, where we do talk about that even deeper, because there are dispositions that people have in their sin nature. For some men, it might be alcohol. For other men, it might be pornography. For some women, it might be insecurities. Might be pornography for them too. Whatever it is, the manifestation of our sins come from that nature that is to be dead, right? That we want to kill. So we talked about how in a moment that a lot of people would call not a sin, Greg and I, or Dr. Mazak, it's very hard to call him Greg, Dr. Mazak and I talked about how actually in that moment, so what Greg was saying, if I look at a woman and in that moment I see her and I desire, not a lust. So we kind of think of lust as I'm going to create a scenario in my head of what I'm going to do with this person. And that
certainly counts.
That certainly counts as lust. But is that all lust is? Or can lust be more than that? Could it be when I see that person, I have a desire that is forbidden? I have that's immediate. And some people would say, well, you have to look away before you sin. And what his argument was that no, when I looked and I had an inordinate desire, I desired, even if I didn't create a scenario, even if I didn't do all that stuff, sin has occurred and I need to ask God to forgive me as I look away.
Yeah.
And so, we were looking at that and so we found, we were discussing Colossians 3 at that time.
Yeah, should we go there?
Yeah, and this is what we were looking at. Colossians 3, verse 5. Therefore, consider the members of your earthly body as dead to immorality, and that's where we get, in the Greek, it's the porneia. That's everything you had been talking about in your testimony when you wanted to act on it. That's what that's talking about.
Yep.
But then it goes into impurity. Now, impurity is interesting because that Greek word refers to both a moral purity as well as a moral activity or a purity in your activity. So it kind of goes both ways. But you have to, dig in the Greek, and whenever you have to dig too deep in the Greek, I'm like, okay, but it's a good argument. But sometimes people dig deep enough in the Greek so it says what they want.
Oh, I see.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
And then it says passion, and that's what that's talking about. Where it's such a drive in me, I'm thinking about it all the time.
Is that the epithemia?
I think passion is just the pathos.
Oh, the pathos. Okay,
yeah.
Got it.
Then there's the evil desires, and that's where Dr. Mazak and I were getting at. Those evil desires. What is an evil desire to the Lord? Well, an evil desire is when I want what has been forbidden. When I desire that which is forbidden. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I definitely agree that lust is broader than just let me play out a sexual scenario in my mind. I think, like you said, you can look at someone with, I think Jesus said something about lustful intent, and then you've committed adultery in your heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of that is just objectifying people, right? You don't see them as who God sees them as. You see them as like, oh, this, I'm going to objectify you, or I'm just going to focus on this body part of you aside from who you are as a holistic person.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. And yeah, I do see a distinction between attraction and lust, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think if you are and these are nuances, right? But I think if you're attracted to someone, you have the option to objectify them, to lust after them, which is wrong. And that passage is talking about that. And that is something that you need to kill. Like you were talking about with Dr. Mazak, the vampire of sin that kind of keeps coming alive, and you have to kill it, and then it comes alive and you have to kill it. So it's like this ongoing thing, unless you're in the holiness movement, in which you do it once and you're good. But like right. this is something that you do constantly have to kill. And so whenever I have these desires to objectify someone on the subway in New York or on the street or at the gym or on my phone, it's like those are evil desires. You should kill those desires, and it's a lifelong thing. And so I would encourage people who are listening in, like, if it feels like I have no option, I just have these attractions, I have to lust, you don't. Like, this is what this passage is saying. Like, you can kill and fight those desires when they rise up, right? You don't have to give into them. And I think it goes back to that passage that I was talking about earlier, where there's no situation that God's going to put us in which we don't have a way to escape from our sin or from sinning. There's always, within any realm of temptation, there's an opt out, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's a promise.
Yeah. And so, when I think about Colossians 3, I'm thinking about that word attraction. And I think that, in our next half hour together, we'll get into that even more. But we'll just get people thinking about it now so that they'll tune in on Wednesday. But this attraction word, I think, is at the heart of where you and I disagree. And I think that if we could really tease that out, we could really have a conversation that I haven't heard anyone else have yet.
Let's do it.
That I would love to. So just to tease it out, we only have like 3 minutes left, but I'll tease it out, and then the next half hour we will just talk about that. So from my perspective, how I am looking at Colossians chapter 3, and I see evil desires, I am thinking of having a desire that is forbidden of the Lord. And I think of that because right next to that is already the passion. He covered the passion part, like the lust part, and he even covered it in the impurity. And so it seems like like what you were talking about, objectifying someone and going into a real, a deeper sin of in my mind. With that one, I think an evil desire is, in my mind, I think, well, that's being attracted to that which I should not be attracted to.
Is that temptation?
Well, see, that's the thing, so temptations in James are usually talked about in terms of moments in time, not a state of being, but like moments in time. So it says when this, temptation comes, then this is what you do. You're drawn by your own lust, and then you're enticed.
Yes, James 1.
Yeah, and that whole thing is designed to say, when you're tempted, even though Christ has been tempted in every way you have, you respond to it unlike Christ. You don't respond to it the way Christ did.
That's right.
You respond to it by enticing yourself with it. And so it's like this smackdown that James loves to do.
Yeah.
It's very hard to read that book. But when I see that, I think, okay, is this where Colton and I really need to talk?
Yeah. I love the James 1 passage because there's a distinction there of like the desire when it conceives brings forth sin, and sin when it's finished brings forth death. So that whole idea that the desire is not the sin, but the desire can conceive or progress into sin. So I think that's the distinction I'm trying to make that is made in James 1 of like the desire itself is not the sin. And I love that you also brought up that Jesus was tempted in every way that we are, yet was without sin, right? Yeah. So we can know that to be drawn to something that God says no to isn't a sin. I look at Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. I think this is the like slam dunk on this point of like he knew what God wanted him to do at the cross. He was sweating blood because he didn't want to go through with it. And he said, not my will, but thine be done. And so there's Jesus' will and the will of the Father and yet Jesus is submitting that will under the Father. And so the fact that Jesus had a will against his Father or contrary to his Father was not the sin, because we know he's not sinful.
Yeah.
It was the fact that he submitted it perfectly and obediently while having that opposite or opposed desire. He submitted that perfectly to the Father, and so he lived a perfect life.
All right. So this is where this is the hitting point that we're going to hit on that you can tune into on Wednesday, because I'm going to have a problem with the idea that Christ had a different will than the Father because of my Trinitarian view of that, and so I'm not going to agree with that.
Okay.
And then, we might have a big difference on whether being drawn to something is a sin or not. But that is going to be great, because that is at the core,
I'm glad we found it,
of our disagreement. And this is the thing. There is something special about disagreement. Disagreement is a rare thing because it means you understand the other person's point of view enough to know that's not you. But what's also great, it gives you an opportunity to demonstrate love to each other. And that's where 1 Peter 3:15 comes in, and we'll even talk about that on Wednesday as well. Thank you for joining us today. You need to tune in to Wednesday's episode, where we go into the real kernel of this whole issue of same-sex attraction and whether or not we can get to maybe agreement or just at least be able to say what we both mean. But you need this. This is important. Tune in on Wednesday. Hope to see you then.